Welcome back to Inclusive Design 24, the 2019 edition, brought to you in partnership with our gold supporters, Barclays Access and Intopia. Don't forget you can subscribe to Inclusive Design 24 on YouTube by visiting youtube.com/inclusivedesign24 and hitting that big, shiny, happy subscribe button. You can follow ID24Conf on Twitter, and if you have questions for our presenter, tweet them using the ID24 hashtag, and we will ask them at the end of the session. ID24 is a global event for the global community, so we're delighted to welcome everyone watching from around the world, especially Lance DePasquale.
Also, just one last reminder that ID24 is a respectful event, and we have a code of conduct that you'll find linked from the footer of our website at inclusivedesign24.org. And now, finally, our last talk of Inclusive Design 24 2019. Delighted to welcome Melanie Sumner, who's going to be talking about the phenomenon of the unlucky choice. Melanie.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to talk today about this idea, the phenomenon of the unlucky choice, the kind of choices that we make in the digital product development process that can hurt us in the long run. But first, who am I? I am a disabled, decorated U.S. Navy veteran. I served as an intelligence analyst in the U.S. Navy. Right now, I work as a senior software engineer and accessibility SME at LinkedIn, where our vision is to create an economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. I work directly on the accessibility of Ember.js, the front-end JavaScript framework that powers LinkedIn apps. It's also a framework committed to providing an accessible experience for everyone that uses an Ember app. I'm a member of the Ember.js core team, and I'm helping to make that accessibility idea happen. In the last year, we've added an accessibility category to the framework documentation, and improving accessibility across the board is one of our primary goals for the next edition of Ember. I'm also a judge for CSS Design Awards in all of my spare time. And yes, I do check the accessibility of sites as part of the design as I'm judging them. I do write articles, I tweet a lot. My Twitter handle is Melanie R. Sumner. And I like to talk about accessibility at conferences. After this talk, my slides will be available online at notist.melsumner/6VELRY. How did I get into web development in general? I became a web developer because I wanted to remove frustration from the world. I remember the happiness I felt in 1997 when I wrote my first lines of HTML and I saw it render successfully on the page. I remember the absolute elation of learning CSS and making my site look different every day just because I could. I soaked up everything I could learn from CSS Zen Garden and Standardista and tried all sorts of different things. I remember the sorrow of trying to learn JavaScript and the joy when it actually finally worked. But around me, I saw people being frustrated with the web, frustrated with poorly designed and implemented software. People who just wanted to check their bank balance or do their jobs that required software, but the software was designed poorly and their frustration mounted as a result. If you think about it, web developers have such great capacity to create delight. And when I discovered that I was pretty okay at this developer thing, I imagined all the ways that I too could change the world. I imagined that maybe if I created a great interface, then people who used it would be happy at work. And if they were happy at work, they'd be even happier leaving work. And then maybe they wouldn't honk so much or have so much road rage. And even maybe they'd be nicer when they got home and start to recycle, and they'd be inspired to reduce their carbon footprint. And then I'd fix global warming. Well, okay, so maybe that's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but you get the idea. But of course, reality is very different. The state of web development today is such that you can have two people who are both front-end developers, but in reality, they don't have the same jobs and their day-to-day has nothing in common. Personally, I think this is because the role that we call JavaScript engineer has taken over the space of web development because it's easier for businesses and it's more efficient to have the same job and the same requirements and the same interview process and the same, well, it's all basically the same thing anyway, right? So we're in this strange twilight zone where there's always a new thing that's supposed to solve all our problems. Only the new thing pretty much has the same problems as the old thing, but we never figure it out until it's too late and everyone's rewritten their apps for the third time. Ember has a backwards compatibility guarantee. This means that new features can be introduced, but they must be backwards compatible. While this does mean extra work for the team, and it's really kind of heroic to witness, it does mean extra work, but the stability that we're able to offer as a result has made it totally worthwhile. But I don't think this kind of stability guarantee should be the exception. I think it should be the rule, but somehow it's not. The thing is, 20 years ago, we were all just figuring out how to do this. 10 years ago, we were just getting JavaScript frameworks to help us efficiently ship web-based software for large companies. But today we should have a lot more stability. Our job should be a lot more boring. We have a lot of stuff figured out, but I don't think that we've realized that yet. So I spent some time thinking about why. I think that today, too many front-end developers spend time learning how to hack things together, but as a result, they end up learning from anti-patterns. But then those developers never really come to understand that the thing they learned how to hack together is really an anti-pattern. To them, it's just a pattern. It's just how you do it. Those developers then use that knowledge to build add-ons and libraries, and they're useful because they do useful things. And they get praised for them. They even get promoted for them. But ultimately, they're not successful because they're not accessible. And there's this moment of intense disconnect for the front-end developer. Why is an accessibility engineer telling them that their super useful thing is wrong? Why is the thing that they were praised for or even promoted for bad? After all the things that they have learned and all the work that it took to get to that point, realizing that they know absolutely nothing about the basics of accessibility can feel really disheartening and even demoralizing. It just feels bad. So then the ninja rockstar unicorn starts to perpetuate the myth that accessibility is hard as a means of sort of self-defense. Surely they were right. They were praised. They got promoted. They landed the fancy job. But this is catastrophically problematic because at a large scale, it feeds into the cycle that promotes something I'd like to think of as faux innovation. And what do I mean by that? These developers become the engineers that are the driving force of what we think of as innovation, but are not really helping us to innovate anything new, but rather reinventing things we already had. Consider AMP. Add some extra markup to and it will make your sites faster. That's what it promises. And this might seem like innovation because slow sites is a problem, but is it really? Or maybe the recent announcement by Google to make developing forms easier. More capable form controls were promised. At the heart of this innovation seems to be JavaScript engineers have complained for so long that it's so hard to style native controls, so we're just going to give you the API and you can just do whatever with it. And sure, sometimes it is hard to style native forms, and I think that can be made easier, and I know folks are working on it. Even just today, I saw a Twitter announcement about a working group. But on top of these poor decisions, all of these poor decisions are piling up one on top of another on top of another. And it turns out some of these problems already had a solution. They were solved problems. The thing is, semantic HTML resolves so many issues that the JavaScript-based solutions attempted to solve or resolve, as the case may be. Too many JavaScript engineers brush off HTML. Oh, I just don't know it that well. Oh, it's just not that important. No, I could just use a div. But I don't think it should be this way. The idea that we're willing to rewrite what's available in HTML simply to make it more JavaScript-like is absolutely baffling to me. I mean, for goodness sake, use a transpiler at least. But all joking aside, maybe the way to interrupt all of this, maybe the way to get us to stop and think for a hot second, is to look at some of the unlucky choices that we make at an individual level. Because one of the ways that change happens is with each and every one of us making personal decisions. The first choice I want to talk about is this choice in design, this choice to chase aesthetics. I think a lot of times folks mix up art and design. Interpretation of art is up to the artist or the viewer, but design is different. Design can have an impact on the usability of a thing. Obviously, I'm a fan of aesthetics, how something looks, or at least I hope my slide deck has shown you that I care, sort of, tiny little bit. But there are some unlucky choices that we can make in design that ultimately hurt our other hard work. For example, gray on light gray, or as I like to call it, when muted tones attack, made popular by unsubscribe links everywhere. Muted design is the modern equivalent of demonstrating wealth in the West. Muted decor lends itself to an airy feel. A popular home painting store here in the United States offers over 100 shades of whites, grays, and beiges, all barely indistinguishable from one another, yet also important that they all must exist. And I think somehow this invaded our digital product design thinking. The web simply became unreadable. White on light gray text, gray on lighter gray text. All of these things became beautiful because big companies who are known for beautiful designs told us that these things were beautiful. They presented them with big splashy events, and suddenly silver and space gray became the color du jour. So we copied them. It was an unlucky choice, but it felt like an easy choice to make. Surely the big company who produced beautiful products and had beautiful presentations, surely they had done their research. Surely they wouldn't steer the entire web in the wrong direction. But I think they did. So what do we do about this in our own products? Two things. The first thing we do is incorporate color contrast checkers into every single step of your process. Designers should have color contrast checkers. Developers should have color contrast checkers. There should be extra tests for color contrast checking. It's 2019 and color contrast in digital products is a solved issue with science and math. We don't have to have this issue anymore, ever. If you're not sure which one to use, search color contrast checker in your search engine of choice, and you'll see a ton of options. Step 2, add this information to your style guide. Make it so gosh darn simple to understand that there's zero question about it. It's documentation that can be used in conversations with product managers, stakeholders, users, designers, developers, everyone. Make it super easy to understand what passes and what fails. But some real talk here, it's vital. Color contrast is vital. And it's a solved problem. And I can assure you that every single accessibility professional in your life is really tired of talking about it. The thing is, we absolutely must be willing to call these things out on our respective teams. The responsibility is on each one of us to be willing to have the conversations necessary to create inclusive products, even if those conversations seem a bit difficult. It's okay to spend some time thinking about the right way to phrase it. It's okay to raise a concern. It's okay to ask about the risk. It is no longer okay to stay silent or to think that the responsibility belongs to someone else, because it does not. Another area where we allowed chasing aesthetics is in form controls, specifically radio buttons. I know Eric Bailey covered this in some of his talk earlier, but I want to talk about it again for a minute. So let's think about where a developer and a new feature request comes in. They'd like a radio button with options for the new form, but they don't want any old radio buttons. They want fancy ones. And it's easy, right? So you could ship it today. And so as a developer, you start to think about the radio button, the default state, the selected state, the disabled state, but you get interrupted with an updated request. Can you ship it yesterday, actually? Oh, and here's some examples of nice looking ones that we found on the internet. So we stopped thinking about radio buttons, and instead we think about how we could ship it yesterday. After all, we're a Ninja Rockstar Unicorn, so of course we can do that. Oh wait, I know, we'll just find one that already exists to save time. And in that moment, you've made a choice. So you go hunting and you find something online that's made by a big tech company and it looks nice and they have tons of components and it all seems to work and there's some documentation, so it must be good enough. Maybe it'll even be great. But in that moment, that's the moment where you've maybe made an unlucky choice. We don't realize it yet, and we're paid enough to do some due diligence, so we check out the markup produced by the big tech company. And we have a div and an input and more divs with something that looks like it's a div for an outer circle and an inner circle and a label. And this seems like a lot, but okay, CSS is hard, right? The rendered output looks pixel perfect like the product owner or designer wanted. So we decide to use it and we go further down the road of that single unlucky choice. What does it really cost us? As Eric mentioned in his analysis, we end up with 6 HTML elements, 9 attributes, 66 CSS selectors, and 30K of minified JS for a radio button. Turns out if your form has too many radio buttons and you try to use that form with a screen reader, this will crash everything because it's too many DOM nodes to handle, period. Not even handle efficiently, just handle at all. All along, we had a much simpler, much more correct answer available to us. By using the field set and legend elements, we can group the radio buttons together in the way it was intended. This also means we'll have an improved experience for users with assistive technology like a screen reader. But what about fancy design? Well, Scott O'Hara has you covered by showing us that we can use CSS that we already had. We can provide non-default radio button styling right along with our default semantic HTML markup. I've made a code pen that you can play around with, and I'll link it in the slides. And it's to demonstrate this point. And huge thanks to Scott for writing about it. Some real talk though. I think it's important that we focus more on bridging the gulf that exists between accessibility and design and development. So to work on that, I started a project for Ember developers called Ember Component Patterns. And my goal is to talk through all of these parts, the correct markup, the correct design defaults, and how to implement the right thing in Ember. And then even thinking about how do we scale this? I've also included anti-patterns that developers might be tempted to embrace, because I believe after 20 years that we cannot just give direction on what to do. We also need to provide education about what not to do. We must talk about the dark side. We must talk about it because that education empowers developers to have the necessary conversations to improve their products. They don't get blindsided because they know what could be coming. You can read more about radio buttons in Ember and watch the project as it progresses by visiting tinyurl.com/ember-component-patterns. Obviously not right now, because I'd like you to finish listening to my talk, but later. So we talked about a couple of unlucky choices that we make when we're chasing good design. Let's talk about a few of the unlucky choices we can make when we develop with less care than perhaps is wise. I like to call this part lost in web space, because it's often how users with assistive technology feel when they're trying to navigate our sites. The first one is missing landmarks. I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you've walked into a grocery store. In grocery stores here in the United States, and I'm only saying that because I don't know how grocery stores work in the other parts of the world, so I can only talk about the ones here. There are rows of groceries. Above these rows of groceries hang signs that tell you where things are. Aisle 5, cereal. Aisle 24, paper plates and napkins, that kind of thing. Now imagine you walked into that grocery store and there are no signs. So you can't get to the aisle you need very quickly. Like Space Cat, you think, oh no, where am I? You have to walk up and down each aisle to check if it's got the thing you need, or you have to stop and ask someone else for help, and that means you can't shop on your own. And that sucks. Why am I talking about grocery stores with no aisle signs, you might be wondering? Because it's similar to a website with no landmark regions. When we fail to wrap the header content in the header tag, or the main content in the main tag, or the footer in the footer tag, we're leaving out the essential markers that allow users with assistive technology to quickly and independently navigate to the part of the website that they want to get to, the part that matters to them most at that moment. Sighted users take this for granted because we can immediately absorb the full scope of the site with one glance. This is a bit of code with no landmarks. It doesn't have any semantic HTML either, but we'll get to that in a minute. This page will read out that there are links. There are links to open an account and another to a page that lists more services offered. It looks like there is an input that you can use for search. And there's some text with a special offer and some other detailed text. Everything has landed on the page in a div. It will render to the browser and as such seems permissible, but none of it at all has any semantic meaning. By comparison, this bit of code has landmarks. We have a header now that contains the page title. We have the navigation element that contains the links to other pages and the site search. The primary content is now contained in the main element, and the copyright info is in the footer. We've just given our users a much easier way to navigate the site. And, I might add, we've just given ourselves a much easier way to test our sites. But what about the code contained in those landmarks? It's missing semantic HTML, which will give the content meaning. So let's go back to the grocery store analogy. So let's say the grocery store now has signs above each aisle. Cereal, aisle 5, paper plates and napkins, aisle 24. But now all of the items on the shelves are not labeled. They're just boxes and cans. This means you have to open up each package to find out what's inside of it, which is super messy and unhygienic and not sustainable, to say the very least. And that's what we have in this code here. We have our landmarks of header, nav, main, and footer, but the content inside of each of those landmarks is still missing semantic meaning. By adding semantic markup, we've now got an H1 inside the header element. The navigation elements are now contained in an unordered list. There's a label associated with our search input field, and the content is now contained in paragraph tags. We've now written more technically accurate and better crafted code that's easier for us to test and maintain because we've used HTML the way it was designed to be used. I really think that there's a non-negligible effect caused by new developers who are trained to use div elements instead of semantic HTML. I really think it's awesome that JavaScript is so prevalent on the web. I know it might not seem like it all the time, but I think it's mostly because we have not learned how to properly wield this powerful tool that we have. But it's made accessibility possible. It's made building powerful web apps something you could learn how to do on your own or at a boot camp or with a friend at a meetup. No computer science degree necessary. The thing is, semantic HTML is not old school. It's necessary. Any content that ends up on a browser page needs to have semantic HTML. As a developer, we must write it. As tech leads, we must provide the feedback when a pull request doesn't have it. As leaders, we must insist on well-crafted code in our products. The thing is, it still goes deeper than chasing aesthetics or marking up code because we're so clever. Because there's 10 ways to do a single thing in JavaScript, and we've not yet come together and made the choice that even though we could do it 10 different ways, there are a lot more interesting problems to be solved, and we could all move forward faster if we focused in on 1 or 2 ways to do a single thing. It's boring, but it's effective. We see this with custom component. Now, I'm an Ember enthusiast. I think that Ember has the best component story out there, bar none. Sorry, guys, I just do. Especially with Ember Octane. I'm seriously the component queen. I adore custom components. But we get tripped up with them because we haven't realized the parts of the component process that should be mind-numbingly boring because they should never change. We reinvent the wheel each time, and in doing that, we forget some important stuff, like keyboard navigation. So how can we do better? We must remember these criteria and put them into every custom component that we create. If it can be done with a mouse, it must also be able to be done with a keyboard. Screen readers already provide a lot of keyboard shortcuts, and you should learn them and don't conflict with them. Focus must return from whence it came. The escape key must close dropdowns, and focus should always go back to the thing that opened it. Another part of where our cleverness gets us into trouble or gets in our way is with ARIA Live. Sometimes when you have spent weeks working on a widget for a big company app, it can feel like the most important thing in the world. That single widget is your whole universe. It's very tempting to use ARIA Live. What happens about async data loading that needs to happen? Somebody will ask us. And then we're Ninja Rockstars. So we say, let's just use the ARIA Live attribute on the widget so the user will know that the new content has been loaded. Everyone's relieved that an answer has been presented and they all go to do it. But the whole team just made a really unlucky choice because if everything is important, then nothing is. Don't annoy your users. Like Space Cat, who comes and knocks everything off your counters. Unless it's counting down to catastrophic doom, don't use it. Just don't. Or maybe if it's an alert. If it's not catastrophic doom and it's not an alert, then really try to avoid it. And my advice more is this: make you and your team read absolutely every bit of spec that exists about ARIA Live before even considering using it. I say this because it's a big enough hurdle that if you do all read it, then you'll probably have a better chance of getting it right. And if you don't want to read it and therefore don't want to use it, your users will be better off anyway. So while you're thinking about catastrophic doom, which will inevitably lead to contemplating the insignificance of our own existence in comparison to the entire universe at large, think about this. Accessibility experts will not be able to innovate on ways to make digital accessibility easier to do while we are repeatedly forced to focus on the same issues that developers and designers cause over and over and over again. There are many other things that I would like to do. One of my recent side projects I started is a command line based choose your own adventure style screen reader for JavaScript engineers. But I'm still dealing with reviewing modals that don't trap focus or having but why do I have to? It's cramping my design creativity conversations. Still, just do it. It's 2019. It's the law. If you live in a place where it's not the law yet, don't worry, it's coming soon. We have all recognized that this is the way forward for the human race, and it will not change, and it will not be stopped, so just do it. The thing is, I've only touched today on the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the unlucky choices that we can make in our applications that will haunt us down the line. By remembering that we always have some level of choice, we can craft better experiences and be more inclusive in our development. I really encourage everyone to create space for deep thinking to occur, because this is where we create the environment for ourselves to genuinely excel and produce long-lasting value. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this talk, or if you have a well actually that just can't wait, please feel free to find me on Twitter at Melanie R. Sumner. Thanks.
Melanie, thank you very much. That was a great talk. I especially like that you requested any well actuallys on Twitter, which we all know is the place where they belong. Laney, have we got any questions or feedback from the Twitter hordes or elsewhere?
Lots of good feedback, particularly echoing, some of the things you said, like, semantic HTML isn't old school, it's necessary. So that's getting a lot of response. One question, you mentioned 2 or 3 times the fact that we've got a lot of rockstar, ninja, unicorn kind of attitude in our industry. Where do you think that's come from? It's obviously damaging, but how do we get to this point, do you think?
I think it comes from, we don't give space to be wrong. We don't give space to be an apprentice. We don't give space to learn. Everyone has to be a senior software engineer. And I can promise any company who has only hired senior software engineers, you don't actually have senior software engineers. You have a mix of people who are faking it until they make it. And by cultivating that kind of environment, and by giving all of these stories about, how I negotiated my 6-figure salary, we're really creating false expectations and in an unsustainable environment that doesn't encourage growth. I think if we took more of the Shuhari approach, which is a Japanese approach where you become the apprentice and then you become the implementer, and then you become the master who writes the new things to be implemented. If we had more of that kind of approach on a regular basis, I think we would be encouraging more sustainable future for web development in general.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it also, it takes away from the many people I've met over the years who are actually just quite happy being part of a team.
Yeah.
They're just happy doing their thing, getting some coding done, some designing done, whatever it may be. They don't want to be out at the front, leading, shouting the odds. They just want to get on with some coding.
Yeah, exactly.
and be part of a collaborative effort to do that. And I think these attitudes, I suspect they make people, feel like they're not as good as they ought to be, or they're somehow missing something, when actually they're just really damn good developers or designers for doing what they do and doing it well. And that seems like a shame to me.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, great.
I certainly like the idea of the journeyman is the way I've heard it referred to before. The idea that you don't have to come in knowing everything, and variations on the team model, I think is called, etc. But the idea that you have to start somewhere. You can have a finite set of skills, but you have to apprentice under somebody or with a team and develop your skills over time. So I agree with what you're saying. That was a very long-winded way of me saying, well, actually, I agree.
Sounds good.
There's your real life well, actually.
Yeah.
I liked your notion of faux innovation as well. That really struck a chord with me, and I think other people listening and responding as well. That's something I'm assuming you've seen a lot in action through your time working with different development teams and communities.
Absolutely. I think as I progress in my career, whenever I see something touted as a new innovation, I will go through the stages of, anger and denial and grief and all of that. But then I try to think about ways that quote unquote new thing can get integrated into the old thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to examine it and get to the heart of it. What specific pain point is it trying to solve? And is the new approach, can it be integrated into the current approach somehow? I joked about using a transpiler, but there's a lot of that going around. So maybe we should look at those kinds of solutions and see where can we improve the thing that already exists and maybe incorporate some of the ideas from the new thing that's actually kind of wonky and weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. It's an interesting sort of comment on humanity, I think, as much as our industry, isn't it? We're collectively pretty terrible at learning from history. but then equally, if we keep trying to solve problems, maybe that also suggests we've never really been able to solve them in the past, and we're still working on it. And each new generation comes along and thinks, hey, I've got a bright idea.
Yeah.
I can fix this. It's great. You also mentioned AMP briefly in your talk, and I know you've been pretty clear in your opinions, ones that I share as well. And I think you've recently become part of the AMP community to try and sort of share your concerns.
I have. Absolutely. I believe that the way that you fix things is by getting involved in fixing them. I'm pretty public about how I feel about AMP and that I don't believe it is the correct path forward for the web. But I do think I'm trying to understand it because I think it's important for accessibility. It's absolutely essential that any new solutions, whether they last long or not, it's absolutely vital that they consider accessibility. And really just looking at it from a more mentally critical angle. What can be learned from this? What about what we already have fell so short that they felt like they had to introduce this? And that's really what I'm hoping to get involved in and kind of figure out.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that one. And I think it's going to be great to have your input into that community to try and do that from the inside. Very much so. You spent quite a lot of your time, I think, also working in the Ember community. What projects there have kind of particularly caught your interest, or what got you involved there?
Ember is a very inclusive community from the get-go. That has a very strong code of conduct, and everyone I met in the Ember community treated me with respect and fairly, and it's been a really tremendous experience. I also really enjoy our mascots. In my thank you slide, I have Zoe, which is sort of a personified hamster, and she's wearing an accessibility t-shirt. And it's just, whenever I look at this little personified hamster, I can't help but smile. And the thing I really like about Ember is that it genuinely tries to layer on a JavaScript solution as like an extension of HTML. It's not trying to replace HTML. It doesn't encourage more creative use of, things like CSS and JS, which I'm sure someone will well actuate me about. But it really tries to let HTML and CSS be the things that they're meant to be, and then add in that extra functionality. And I just found it was such a natural progression for me. It was the framework, it was the building tool or whatever that I'd always been looking for. And I don't have to mess with any build tools. Ember CLI is kind of like one of the original JavaScript framework CLIs. And I can type Ember S. I don't have to do a gulp or a grunt or a Webpack or a roll up or any of those. It just is taken care of for me already. And as someone who just would rather focus on the functionality of my application rather than setting up a config file, this is immensely useful to me. So it's just been a great community to get involved with, and bringing more accessibility, of course, to a JavaScript framework is really rewarding. Especially when you have people who want to listen and who want to do the right thing, the correct thing. It's really enjoyable. So it's just been a really rewarding experience, and I'm glad I got involved.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It's nice to hear that there's from your perspective, at least a lower barrier to entry to not just the community, but the technology. Always a good thing.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Well, I haven't seen any other questions come in, so I'm going to wrap us up. And Melanie, thank you very much. That was a great talk. I enjoyed it. I especially love the t-shirt that your hamster proxy is wearing. For those who can't see it, it's the little blue accessibility symbol guy that appears in all the software screens and meetup things now. And it's a Ringer t-shirt, right? I'm not going to pretend I know fashion. Okay, so here we go. If you liked this session, hit that YouTube like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to youtube.com/inclusivedesign24 for future notifications. A reminder that Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you with thanks to our gold supporters, Barclays Access and Intopia, our silver supporters, Adobe and SiteImprove, and our bronze supporters, Samsung Internet, DQ Systems, and the Paciello Group. It is captioned by MyClearText. Inclusive Design 24 talks are officially over, but we will be back on the hour for a bit of an after party, a brief after party where the organizers/hosts will get together and you will get a chance to see how much the sleep deprivation has impacted them. Leonie is laughing. That's a good sign.
That's all I got left. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. So again, Melanie, thank you very much. And for our viewers, we hope to see you in 18 minutes. And thank you everybody for coming in and listening and viewing, whether in real time or dropping in randomly and picking up sessions here and there. We hope you come back and listen to all of the other sessions and hopefully rewatch them, continue to give them thumbs up, likes, and shares. And we look forward to doing this all again next year as well. Thank you all, and cheers.